All praise and thanks belong to Allah Azza wa Jal, the Lord, creator and sustainer of the heavens and the earth. We place our greetings and salutations upon the most beloved of Allah's creation, the Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, upon his family members, upon his companions, and upon all of those who follow his way of life until the end of times. Allah Azza wa Jal make us from them. Ameen. Beloved brothers and sisters in Islam, if there are any sisters, hope all of you are well, inshaAllah ta'ala. We've got Riyaz over here and Abdul Hamid, Abdul Kareem, Abu Davids, محمد زين الشهيد إن شاء الله. فلنبدأ. Let's start إن شاء الله. Okay, so the author رحمه الله تعالى, I'm going to read from this passage again إن شاء الله. وقد ذكر هذا الطريق بلفظ جامع مانع محمد مرتضى ابن محمد الزبيدي صاحب التاج العروس في منظومة له تسمى ألفية السند، يقول فيها: فما حوى الغاية في ألف سنة شخص فخذ من كل فن أحسن، بحفظ متن جامع للراجح تأخذه على مفيد ناصح. So the author rahimahullah ta'ala, just give me a few seconds. The author rahimahullah ta'ala, he quotes a famous scholar of Islam by the name of Muhammad, or Muhammad Murtada ibn Muhammad al-Zabidi. Who can tell me where's the place? Where's the place Zabid? Have you heard this about this place? Zabid is in Al-Yaman, all right? So he says وَقَدْ ذَكَرَ هَذَا الطَّرِيقِ, and he has mentioned this methodology, the method of studying, بِلَفْظٍ جَامِعٍ مَانِعٍ, with words that are comprehensive in nature. Who has mentioned this? A scholar by the name of Muhammad Murtada ibn Muhammad al-Zabidi. So Muhammad Murtada ibn Muhammad al-Zabidi was actually born in India in the year 1145. So he's a 12th century scholar. So he lived about 242 years ago. He's a scholar who wrote many books. From among those books are Taj al-Urus, which is like a dictionary, an Arabic dictionary. And he also wrote a work called Alfiyatu Sanad. And Alfiyatu Sanad is basically a poem of 1,000 verses in which he mentions his teachers and the books that he has ijaza in. And he says in this poem: يقول راجي أفو ربي والرضا محمد هو الشريف المرتضى الحمد لله المفيض الهادي إلى طريق الوصل بالإسناد بحفظه الفرد عن الإعضال ورفعه الصحيح للإكمال إليه في كل أمور أستند وما ينوب فعليه أعتمد ثم الصلاة مع السلام على النبي المصطفى التهامي. So it's a 1,000-line poem in which he mentions his teachers and the asanid. And the scholars have studied and commentated on this poem because it is a rich source of names of scholars, the biographies of scholars, and the books that Muhammad Murtada bin Muhammad al-Zabidi had ijazat and asanid in. And Shaykh Abdul Fattah rahimahullah, the great late Syrian scholar, he said that Muhammad Murtada bin Muhammad al-Zabidi wrote 107 works. 107 works, and 47 of those works were pertaining to hadith. So the author of Taj al-Arus mentions in a manzuma lahu, in a poem that he has authored, to Samma, and this poem is called Alfiyat as-Sanad. Whenever you see here the word Alfiyat, means 1,000 verses. Alfiyat as-Sanad. And as-Sanad, because he mentions in there his asanid and his teachers. He says, فما حوى الغاية في ألف سنة. He says, فما حوى يحوي. You can tell me what's the meaning of the word حوى يحوي? Hawa Yahwi means you get books called Al-Hawi Al-Kabir. Hawa, the muhtawa of a book, at the back of a book, the muhtawayat. What's the word Hawa Yahwi?
To
There's a
contain,
famous.
Maulana. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum
If you
salam
get
rahmatullah.
like the
Yes,
content.
to contain. The muhtawayat, that which, to contain. Hawa Yahwi means to contain. Man hafidh al-mutun has al-funun. Whoever memorizes the mutun, he will has al-funun. He will know all the sciences. وَمَنْ قَرَأَ الْحَوَاشِي مَا حَوَشَيْ. And whoever reads they call it the footnotes, the super commentaries, مَا حَوَشَيْ. He will not know anything. He will not contain anything. So he says, فَمَا حَوَى الْغَايَةَ فِي أَلْفِ سَنَةٍ. He will not contain the limit of knowledge within 1,000 years. If you are given 1,000 years, you won't be able to study every science. شخص, that's the fa'il, شخص. So فما حوى شخص الغاية في ألف سنة. No شخص will contain the highest, the ultimate of knowledge in 1,000 years. فخذ من كل فن أحسن. So take the best from every fun. فخذ من كل فن, take from every fun أحسن, the best of it. فما حوى الغاية في ألف سنة شخص فخذ من كل فن أحسن. بحفظ متن جامع للراجح. How do you do that? By memorizing a matan that is comprehensive and that contains the relied upon view within that matan. So he says, when you memorize a matan that is jami, comprehensive, meaning it contains all of the things that you need to know, and it contains the mu'tamad, the relied upon view. And as we mentioned, the scholars say when you choose to memorize a book, a poem, or a matan, always choose that matan choose the best tab'ah. Choose that which is muhaqqaqah, which is edited. تأخذه, and you should take this matan, you should learn it على مفيد ناصح, upon a teacher who has the ahliyah to give knowledge, and he is nasih. We explain what nasih means. Nasih means someone who you can take as a guide because of his conduct, his guidance, and his manners, and someone who has the ability to teach. فطريق العلم, he says, so the path of knowledge, وجادته, and its path, مبنية على أمرين, it is based upon two matters. فطريق العلم وجادته, that's the مبتدا. مبنية is the خبر على أمرين. من أخذ بهما, whoever takes these two things, كان معظما للعلم, he will be magnifying, glorifying knowledge. لأنه يطلبه, because he is seeking knowledge, من حيث يمكن الوصول إليه, in such a way that it is possible for him to reach it. فأما الأمر الأول, as for the first matter, فحفظ متن جامع للراجح, you should memorize a matan that is comprehensive and that contains the relied upon view. فلا بد من حفظ, it is necessary to memorize. ومن ظن أنه ينال العلم, whoever thinks that he will be able to attain knowledge بلا حفظ, without memorization, فإنه يطلب محالا, he is seeking that which is impossible. والمحفوظ المعول عليه, that which is memorized and dependent upon والمتن الجامع للراجح, it is that text that is comprehensive and contains the mu'tamad, the relied upon view in the Ahl al-Fan, according to the scholars of that particular science. فلا ينتفع طالب, a student will not benefit, يحفظ المغمور, when he memorizes some obscure poem or some obscure matan, في فن, in a particular science, ويترك مشهوره, and he leaves off the well-known text within that science. كمن يحفظ ألفية الآثار, such as a person who memorizes the ألفية الآثار. The ألفية الآثار was authored by Zainuddin Sha'ban bin Muhammad al-Qurashi al-Athari. He died in the year 828, and he was from Mosul. He was from Mosul, Iraq, but he lived and is buried in Egypt. So he wrote a poem in Nahu. He wrote a poem in Nahu. So there's this poem of 1,000 verses. كمن يحفظ ألفية الآثار في النحو. He takes this obscure نحو text, نحو poem, memorizes it, containing all the قواعد, ويترك ألفية بن مالك, and he leaves ألفية بن مالك. Now ألفية بن مالك is basically the final stage of your نحو studies. Any person who wishes to specialize in نحو, he needs to eventually reach ألفية بن مالك. ألفية بن مالك is one of the most famous poems of 1,000 verses on Nahu. It was written by Muhammad Jamaluddin ibn Abdullah ibn Malik al-Andalusi, who was from Al-Andalus. He was from Muslim Spain. And his book, the Alfiya, is called Al-Khulasa fi Nahwi, the summary in Nahu. Imagine that's a summary, 1,000 verses. He was born in the year 600 and he died in the year 672. And his poem goes as بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قال محمد هو ابن مالك أحمده خير مالك مصليا على الرسول المصطفى وآله المستكملين الشرفا وأستعين الله في ألفية مقاصد النحو بها محوية تقرب الأقصى بلفظ موجز وتبسط البذل بوعد منجز. It's a beautiful poem. So this is the Alfiya of Ibn Malik. So the author, rahimahullah, says, when you memorize a matan, memorize the most famous matan within that particular subject. وَأَمَّا الْأَمْرُ الثَّانِي. As for the second point, the second matter, he says, فَأَخْذُهُ. Then you should take it, you should study it, على مفيد ناصح. Upon a alim that is mufid and nasih. مفيد ناصح. فَتَفْزَعُ إِلَى شَيْخٍ. You should hasten to a teacher, تتفهم عنه معانيه, in which you try. تتفهم means you struggle to understand. تتفهم means you are seeking to understand from him معانيه. So after memorizing the text, you go to the teacher and you learn from him the meanings of that text. يتصف بهذين الوصفين. The teacher should be characterized with these two characteristics. أولهما الإفادة. He should have the ability to give benefit. And what's the meaning of الإفادة? هي الأهلية في العلم. He's got this أهلية in knowledge. He's got the scholarly level. فيكون ممن عرف. He is from those who are known بطلب العلم وتلقي, and taking it حتى أدرك, until he has reached علم. فصارت له ملكة قوية فيه. He has a strong ملكة, a command in knowledge. And the evidence for this, والأصل بمعنى هنا الدليل. The evidence في هذا, for this is ما أخرجه أبو داود. ما أخرجه أي ما رواه أبو داود. That which Abu Dawud narrates في سنن قال, he says حدثنا زهير بن حرب وعثمان بن أبي شيبة قال حدثنا جرير عن الأعمش عن عبد الله بن عبد الله عن سعيد بن جبير. Sa'id bin Jubair is one of the most famous students of Abdullah bin Abbas. There's a beautiful story how his life came to an end. عن ابن عباس, from Abdullah bin Abbas, رئيس المفسرين, among the Sahaba, بين الصحابة, أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال, the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم said, تسمعون, you will listen, you are benefiting from me, you are taking knowledge from me. ويسمع منكم, and knowledge will be heard from you, meaning knowledge will be taken from you. وَيُسْمَعُ مِمَّنْ يَسْمَعُ مِنْكُمْ, and knowledge will be heard and taken mimman, from those who are taking knowledge and hearing knowledge from you. So you will be taking knowledge from me, you are taking knowledge from me. وَيُسْمَعُ مِنْكُمْ, the tabi'un will come and they will take knowledge from you. وَيُسْمَعُ مِمَّنْ يَسْمَعُ مِنْكُمْ, and knowledge will then be heard from the tabi'un. By whom? By the atba'u tabi'in. وَإِسْنَادُ قَوِي. Shaykh Sālih says, and the chain of this narration is authentic. Qawi is another way of saying sahih. So the scholars are muradif. So why Shaykh Sālih al-Usaymī bringing this narration? He's telling you this is the method that ilm should be, from teacher to student. And that's why when you are a teacher, should be someone who is mufid. He has the ahliyah fil ilm. He has the capabilities and the level of scholarship that is required to teach people. And Shaykh Sālih al-Usaymī comments on this hadith. He says, وَالْعِبْرَ بِأُمُومِ الْخِطَابِ. Consideration of this hadith. The meaning of this hadith should be looked at from the perspective بِعُمُومِ الْخِطَابِ, by the generality of the words that the Prophet ﷺ used. لا بخصوص المخاطب, and not by the specificity of those who were addressed. Yes, the Prophet addressed a certain group of people, But we don't look at who was addressed and restrict the hadith to them. We say, no, that hadith is general. You will learn, and there will be people who will learn from you, and others will learn from them. So the wording of the hadith is am. لا بخصوص المخاطب فلا يزال من معالم العلم في هذه الأمة. So from the signs of knowledge within this ummah is أن يأخذه الخالف عن السالف, that the latest people will take it from the early scholars, from the earlier people. And the second quality is he must be مفيد ناصحي. أما الوصف الثاني, the second quality is he should be someone, it is النصيحة وتجمع معنيين اثنين. And this kalima nasiha has two meanings. أحدهما, the first you can read it أحدهما or you can read it أحدهما. صلاحية شيخ للاقتداء به. The shaykh that that you are studying with, he is suitable للاقتداء به, to be emulated and followed. والاهتداء بهديه, taking guidance from his guidance. ودله, his character or his behavior. وسمته, and his behavior and his character, taking guidance from his guidance. وَدَلِّهِ وَسَمْتِهِ, and his behavior and his character. That's one thing. وَالْآخَرْ, the second thing is مَعْرِفَتُهُ, his knowledge of what? His knowledge of طرائق التعليم, the different methods of teaching. بحيث يحسن تعليم المتعلم, in such a way he is able to teach in a good manner. وَيَعْرِفُ مَا يَصْلُحْ لَهُ وَمَا يَضُرُّهُ, he knows that which is beneficial for the student and that which is harmful for the student. وَفْقَ التَّرْبِيَةِ الْعِلْمِيَّةِ, and this is in accordance with the teaching, academic teaching التي ذكرها الشاطبي في الموافقات, that Imam Shatibi rahimahullah has mentioned in his book Al-Muwafaqat. Now Al-Muwafaqat is one of the greatest books of this religion. It's a book that deals with قواعد الفقهية, fiqh maxims, usul al-fiqh, and the maqasid al-sharia, the higher objectives of the law. It was written by a scholar by the name of Abu Ishaq Ibrahim bin Musa al-Gharnati al-Andalusi, also from Al-Andalus, from Granada, Al-Andalus. Ash-Shatibi, he is attributed to a land, Shativa, which is in modern day Valencia today. He died in the year 790, and one of the greatest books that he authored was this book, the Muwafaqat. The Muwafaqat fi Usul Sharia. He wrote another book called Al-I'tisam, which is a book on the discussion of bid'ah and sunnah, which is also an excellent book. But in this book, in one of the muqaddimat of the book, one of the introductions of the book, it mentions the different methodologies of teaching and how knowledge is acquired. And that's why the author, rahimahullah, says, part of a quality of a good teacher is that he is able to perfectly teach. He knows what is beneficial for the student and what is harmful for the student, according to the tarbiyah ilmiya, according to the methodologies of teaching, the pedagogical approaches that has been mentioned by Ash-Shatibi in Al-Muwafaqat. The author rahimahullah ta'ala continues. Are you guys still with me?
No,
خلاص إن شاء الله. The author rahimahullah ta'ala now continues and he says, Al-Ma'qidu Sadis, the sixth fundamental from the fundamentals of من الأصول الجامعة المحققة عظمة العلم في قلب طالب. From those principles, those 20 principles that brings about the greatness of knowledge and the glorification of knowledge in the heart of the student is رعاية فنونه في الأخذ. رعاية فنونه في الأخذ والتقديم الأهم فالمهم. Keeping in mind the various sciences in learning في الأخذ والتقديم الأهم, and giving preference to the most important فالمهم, and then to that which is secondary in importance. The author rahimahullah says, إن الصورة المستحسنة يزيد حسنها بتمتع البصر بجميع أجزائها. He says a beautiful picture, يزيد حسنها, its beauty increases بتمتع البصر, when the eye enjoys جميع أجزائها, all of its parts, when you can see the picture in its entirety. ويفوت من حسنها عند الناظر, and the looker, the one who looks at the picture, he will miss some of its beauty بقدر ما يحتجب عنه من أجزائها, to the extent of that which is covered from him, from the parts of the picture. So he says a picture can only be truly appreciated when you look at it in its entirety. And to the extent that which you miss of the picture, that's the amount of benefit that you will get. You will not truly appreciate the beauty of that picture. And he says knowledge of this deen is like that. Only by knowing something of everything in this deen will you truly appreciate this deen. But if there are things that are obscure to you, you will not see and appreciate the academic rigor contained within this deen. من رعى فنونه بالأخذ وأصاب من كل فن حظا كملت آلته في العلم. Whoever considers all the sciences بالأخذ, by learning it, وأصاب, and he reaches من كل فن, in every fun he reaches and he obtains a حظ, a portion thereof, كملت آلته في العلم. His tools in knowledge will become complete. His tools will become complete. So now the author rahimahullah, in the previous 5 principles or 4 principles, the author rahimahullah mentioned those characteristics, صفات يتحلى بها طالب العلم, those characteristics that the student of knowledge should imbibe within him. Sincerity, purifying of his heart, all of those beautiful qualities. Now the scholar in this principle before this, Al-Ma'qid al-Khamis, the author is mentioning the methodology of studying. What is the method of studying? So he mentioned in the previous principle the importance of memorization. Now he's mentioning how to study different books and subjects. قال ابن الجوزي رحمه الله, Abdul Rahman bin Ali bin Muhammad. He is called Ibn al-Jawzi. Who can tell me why is he called? His kunya was Abu al-Faraj. He was the alim of the time. He was from the land of Baghdad. He is a polymath who has written on hadith. He has written on tafsir. He's got a beautiful book called Sayyid al-Khatir, which is on raqa'iq. He has written a book called Talbis Iblis, how shaitan has misled many groups, like the Shia and stuff like that. He has written on firaq. He was born in the year 508 and he died in the year 597. In the place where it is said that his grandfather either worked or lived near a jetty where they keep the boats and stuff like that, right? And this place was called Jawza, right? And so he is known as Ibn al-Jawzi, the son of the one who lives or works in the Jawza, at that place basically. So that's why it's called Ibn al-Jawzi, a Hanbali scholar. He said, Jam'ul ulumi mamduhun, gathering of various sciences is something which is praiseworthy. Then Shaykh Sālih al-Usaymī quotes a line of poetry, من كل فن خذ ولا تجهل به فالحر مطلع على الأسرار. From every science take a portion thereof and do not be ignorant of that science. فالحر, because a truly intellectually free person is who? He is that person مطلع, that is aware على الأسرار, of all the secrets. And this line is attributed to Ibn al-Wardi, who has a beautiful poem called the Lamiyah of Ibn al-Wardi. This is not part of the Lamiyah, but Ibn al-Wardi has a Shafi Egyptian scholar. He has a poem called the Lamiyah. Why is it called the Lamiyah? Who can tell us? Why? We spoke about this, the Ha'iyah, the Lamiyah, the Nuniyah, the Mimiyah. What is that got to do with the poem?
Well, I think it's because I remember it's because every word of the bait ends in that letter. So it was ha'iyah, the verse will end in a ha and imiyah and a mim.
So every line ends with that particular letter.
Okay.
So he brings this poem to emphasize the importance of learning a portion of every science, knowing at least what that science is about. ويقول شيخ شيوخنا, Shaykh Sālih al-Usaymī said, the teacher of our teachers, Muhammad bin Mani. Muhammad bin Mani died in the 60s. He was a Saudi scholar. He said in his book, Irshad al-Tullab, and the full name of the book is Irshad al-Tullab ila fadilat al-ilmi wal-amal wal-adab, guiding the students to the virtue of knowledge, action, and etiquette. He says in this book, وَلَا يَنْبَغِي لِلْفَاضِلِ, It is not befitting for the fadil, for the noble individual, أن يترك علما, to abandon any science من العلوم النافعة, from the beneficial sciences, التي تعين على فهم الكتاب والسنة, that will aid in understanding the Quran and the Sunnah. إذا كان يعلم من نفسه قوة على تعلمه, especially if he knows from himself that he has the ability to learn it. ولا يسوغ له, it is also not befitting and allowed for him أن يعيب العلم الذي يجهله, to criticize any knowledge that he is ignorant of. ويزري بعالمه, and to belittle the one who knows that. فإن هذا نقص, this is deficiency, ورذيلة. فالعاقل, the intelligent person, ينبغي له أن يتكلم بعلم. He should, a intelligent person is someone who speaks with knowledge, أو يسكت بحلم, or he stays quiet with clemency and with generosity. He stays quiet. He doesn't speak out of his turn. He knows his lane. And subhanAllah, how true is this? How many times you hear people saying, why do they study that stuff? That's not like beneficial. I heard someone saying like, studying the science of hadith is not like, it's not beneficial. It's like the science of hadith is not, why everything has been done already. Why do you still? I've heard also someone saying like qira'at. Why do people place importance in studying qira'at and stuff like that? So there's a common Arab saying that says, "An-nas a'da lima jahilu." People are enemies of that which they are ignorant of. And so Shaykh Sālih, he quotes the teacher of his teachers. He says, it is not befitting for any student أن يعيب العلم, to criticize a science which is يجهله, that is ignorant of, ويزري بعالمه. فإن هذا نقص ورذيلة, فالعاقل ينبغي له أن يتكلم بعلم أو يسكت بحلم. And that's why the scholars say having a little knowledge is more dangerous than having no knowledge at all. No, قليل من العلم. A little knowledge is more dangerous than no knowledge at all. Because a little knowledge makes you think you know. And so Shaykh Sālih al-Usaymī, he says that the teacher of his teacher said, فَالْعَاقِلْ يَنْبَغِي لَهُ أَنْ يَتَكَلَّمَ بِعِلْمٍ. Intelligent person, it is befitting for him to speak either with knowledge or to stay quiet with grace. وَإِلَّا, otherwise, دَخَلَ تَحْتَ قَوْلِ الْقَائِلِ, otherwise he falls under the statement of the poet who said, أَتَانِ أَنَّ سَهْلًا ذَمَّ جَهْلًا عُلُومًا لَيْسَ يَعْرِفُهُنَّ سَهْلُ علوما لو قراها ما قلاها ولكن الرضا بالجهل سهل. أتاني, it has come to me that a person by the name of Sahl ذم جهلا, he has criticized, he has criticized جهلا, here is the hal, it's not the maf'ul bihi. He has criticized ignorantly. It's not he has criticized ignorance. He has criticized ignorantly. What does he criticize? علوما, knowledge. ليس يعرفهن سهل, which he Sahl doesn't know. He has criticized knowledge which he is unaware of. علوما, such knowledge. لو قراها, it's لو قرأها, if he read it, ما قلاها, he would not disparage it. ولكن الرضا بالجهل سهل, but being happy and pleased with being ignorant, it's easy. Sahl is the name of the person, and here it's بمعنى easy, the linguistic meaning. ولكن الرضا بالجهل سهل. انتهى كلامه. That's the end of what Shaykh شيوخنا said. Then he continues by saying, وإنما تنفع رعاية فنون العلم باعتماد أصلين. He says, considering the various sciences of ilm will only be beneficial باعتماد أصلين, by depending on two foundations and two principles. Number one, أحدهما تقديم الأهم فالمهم, giving preference to the most important and then to that which is secondary in importance. مما يفتقر إليه المتعلم, what should you give importance to when you learn? He says مما يفتقر إليه المتعلم في القيام بوظائف العبودية لله, that which the student, the muta'allim, needs, يفتقر إليه, in carrying out في القيام وظائف, the duties of servitude to Allah. So you should learn that knowledge which is fardul ain. The Prophet ﷺ said, طلب العلم فريضة على كل مسلم. Seeking knowledge is an obligation upon every Muslim. What did the Prophet ﷺ mean when he said that طلب العلم فريضة على كل مسلم? Seeking knowledge is an obligation upon every Muslim. He meant that knowledge that you need every day. So you need to do wudu every day. You need to know the wudu. And you need to know the najasat. And females need to know the masail of hayd and nifas. And you need to know about the fiqh of salah. And if you are in business, you need to know the fiqh of business. If you're going for hajj, then you need to know the fiqh of hajj. If you don't have the ability, then knowing hajj is not fard upon you. If you never give zakat, knowing the masail of hajj or of zakat never becomes an obligation upon you. So he says, the sciences of Islam will only benefit you if you give preference to that which is most important and then to that which is of secondary importance. مما يفتقر إليه المتعلم, that which the student requires في القيام in carrying out وظائف العبودية لله, the different duties of servitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. سئل مالك بن أنس, Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala was asked, Imam Dar al-Hijrah, Imam Malik rahimahullah was known as the Imam of the land of Hijrah, which is Medina. He was asked about طلب العلم. فقال, he then said, طلب العلم, he said, studying and learning the deen, حسن جميل. He says it is something that is beautiful. ولكن انظر الذي يلزمك. But he said, look to that which is necessary upon you, that which is a requirement upon you. من حين تصبح إلى حين تمسي فالزمه. From the time you enter the morning until you enter the evening, and then stick to that. Learn that knowledge. The knowledge that you require in your 24-hour daily life. And that narration comes in a book by the name of ما رواه الأكابر عن Malik, that which scholars more senior to Imam Malik in knowledge, that which they narrated from him. There's a special chapter in the science of hadith called رواية الأكابر عن الأصاغر. That, so scholars who are more senior in knowledge and age, narrating from those who are younger than them and they're juniors basically. So there's a book by the name of ما رواه الأكابر عن Malik, that which scholars that are considered like Malik's teachers narrated from him. And who is the narrator of this? Muhammad bin Makhlad ad-Dawri. He says, and the full narration is قال حدثنا محمد قال حدثنا أحمد بن منصور الرمادي قال حدثنا حرملة قال أنبأنا ابن وهب قال طلب العلم لحسن ولكن انظر إلى the narration is mixed up here in my book. He says قال رجل من أهل الخير وسأل عن طلب العلم فقال الذي يلزمك من حين تصبح ومن حين تمسي فالزمه ولا تؤثرن عليه شيئا. In a different version, Imam Malik rahimahullah says, study that which befits you to know from the morning till the evening. Study that which you need to know, that concerns you, that you need to know for your 24-hour day. Stick to it and do not give anything preference over it. So Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala said this. قال أبو عبيدة معمر بن المثنى. Abu Ubaidah Ma'mar bin al-Muthanna, who was born in the year 110 and died in the year 209, from the great scholars of this deen and linguists, he said, Man shaghala nafsahu bi ghayri al-muhim. Whoever busies himself with that which is unimportant, adarra bil muhim. He will eventually harm that which is important. If you concentrate on things that are not important, you will start leaving out the fard. You will start abandoning the fard. Whoever concerns himself with things that he's not supposed to concern himself, he's busy learning buyu, but he doesn't need to make salah, it will soon affect that which is important. So that's the first point, inshaAllah ta'ala. Is everybody still with me?
نعم مولانا.
The Shaykh continues and he brings a line of poetry. وَقَدِّمَ الْأَهَمَّ إِنَّ الْعِلْمَ جَمْ وَالْعُمْرُ طَيْفٌ زَارَ أَوْ ضَيْفٌ أَلَمْ. وَقَدِّمِ الْأَهَمَّ. Give preference to that which is the most important. Why? إِنَّ الْعِلْمَ جَمْ. Because knowledge is what? Knowledge is a lot. Jam. وَالْعُمْرُ طَيْفٌ. Time is like a طيف. A طيف is like a ghost. Zara, it comes and it goes. أو ضيف, or it is like a guest, alam, that settles with you. He comes, he spends time and he leaves. That's age. Your age is leaving you. You can't be spending your time in learning that which is not important. That saying of Abu Ubaid Ma'mar al-Muthanna comes in, is reported by Imam al-Khatib al-Baghdadi rahimahullah in his al-Jami'. والآخر, that's the first point. The second one is أن يكون قصده في أول طلبه تحصيل مختصر من كل فن. The second thing is, the other one is, so the first thing is giving preference to that which is most important. والآخر أن يكون قصده, his intention should be في أول طلبه, in the beginning of his studies, تحصيل مختصر, learning a مختصر. Who can tell me what's a مختصر?
Something that is
concise
concise.
or abbreviated.
Yeah.
So something that is concise, abridged. The scholars say ما قل لفظه وكثر معناه. That which is brief in meaning, but it's brief in word, but its meaning is a lot. So the mukhtasar of Abu Suja in fiqh. So many of the scholars would say, some scholars requested me فاختصرت, and I made ikhtisar for them. I wrote a mukhtasar for them. So the student should learn a mukhtasar in every science. حتى إذا استكمل أنواع العلوم النافعة, until he has completed the study of all the different types of beneficial knowledge. نظر إلى ما وافق طبعه, he then looks further to that which agrees with his nature. منها, من هذه العلوم. وآنس من نفسه قدرة عليه, and he feels from himself that he has an ability over this knowledge. فتبحر فيه, and then he specializes then. تبحر, he becomes a بحر. صار كالبحر, he becomes like an ocean in it. سواء كان فنا واحد أم أكثر, whether it is one science or more than one science. أما بلوغ الغاية, أما بلوغ الغاية, as for reaching the غاية, the ultimate, في كل فن, becoming a specialist in all sciences. والتحقق, and becoming erudite بملكته, by gaining a command over all sciences. فإنما, the Shaykh Sālih al-Usaymī رحمه الله says, فإنما يهيأ له الواحد بعد الواحد. It is only decreed for one person after another person في أزمنة متطاولة, in, you know, in huge, how can I translate this now in the most befitting manner? It is only given for some people across, في أزمنة متطاولة, across the ages. That's a good translation. Across the ages. Some, we call this person a polymath. So they will say Imam Suyuti rahimahullah was a polymath. Imam Nawawi rahimahullah was a polymath. He knew lugha, he knew hadith, he knew fiqh, he knew tafsir, he knew aqidah, he knew everything. That's a polymath. فإنما يهيأ له الواحد بعد الواحد. This is only prepared for one person after the other person in what's the word that we said? Across the ages. في أزمنة متطاولة. In different times, basically. Not all people have this. Most people will take their whole life to specialize in one science, and other people, Allah made them polymaths, where they specialize and they have deep knowledge in many sciences. Is everybody with me? Is there any word that you need to know that you don't know or don't have? Everybody with me? Okay. Can everybody hear me? Just confirm that you can hear. Okay, khalas, you can hear me. Okay, so the author rahimahullah goes on and then he says, ثم ينظر المتعلم فيما يمكنه من تحصيلها إفرادا للفنون ومختصراتها واحد بعد واحد أو جمعا لها والإفراد هو المناسب لعموم الطلبة. Then the author rahimahullah mentions, this is an issue of dispute among the scholars. Is it better to learn one science at a time, or is it better to learn multiple sciences at a time? So the scholars from the Shanaqita, the Shinkitis, the scholars of Mauritania, they say the talib should learn one book at a time. So you go to the teacher every day. You memorize maybe the Alfiyah. Every day you go to the Shaykh's tent. You memorize the five verses, then you go to the Shaykh's tent, and then he teaches you the meaning of those, and then you go home, and then throughout the day you revise, you memorize, and then you go back. And like that, doing one until you complete the Alfiyah. Now you go to the next book, Al-Uqud al-Jumman in Balagha, then you memorize. Then you go to a book on Sirah. Other scholars, and this is the approach that is taken by most modern day educational systems, they do multiple books. So if you study in a university or in a madrasa, in a seminary, then generally you do multiple subjects a day. You do like 5, 6 subjects a day. He says, ثم ينظر المتعلم, then the student will look فيما يمكنه من تحصيلها, into that which will give him the ability to attain these sciences. إفرادا للفنون, either he can single out sciences ومختصراتها and the abridged text with regards to those sciences واحدا بعد واحد, one after the other, أو جمعا لها, or he can study multiple texts together. والإفراد, studying a single text, والمناسب, it is suitable لعموم الطلبة, for most students. And that's what we're going to do, inshallah. We're going to study one book at a time. He then goes on and he says, ومن طيار شعر الشناقطة. The Shanaqita are the scholars of the Shinkitis. And these scholars are amazing, right? Subhanallah. Medina is filled with scholars from that land, from Mauritania, the Shinkiti scholars, right? The famous Sheikh Dadu, he's a Shinkiti scholar. These scholars they literally walk around in their brains with thousands and thousands of books memorized. I teach at the institute in Saudi Arabia, and I met some of the youngsters are basically born in Medina, but their parents are from Mauritania. And subhanallah, this guy is studying electrical engineering, but he has memorized the Quran, right? He's memorized one or two qira'at. He memorized the Mukhtasar Khalil in Maliki fiqh. Subhanallah, he's memorized so many books, and he's not even considered an alim. But those type of people, so they don't. He was not born in Mauritania, but he's from the Shinkitis who live in Medina. But that tradition is passed on from father to son, and his grandkids will all do that. So I asked him, what does your father do? So he says, my father just teaches mutun and stuff like that to students. So ومن طيار شعر شناقطة قول أحدهم. So from the طيار means the poetry that we do not know who the author is. Anonymous poetry. So from the anonymous shi'r, poetry of the Shanaqita, is the statement of one of them, وَإِن تُرِدْ تَحْصِيلَ فَنٍ تَمِّمْهُ وَعَنْ سِوَاهُ قَبْلَ الْإِنْتِهَاءِ مَهْ وَفِي تَرَادُفِ الْعُلُومِ الْمَنْعُوجَا إِن تَوْأَمَانِ اسْتَبَقَا لَنْ يَخْرُجَا. وَإِن تُرِدْ, and if you wish, تَحْصِيلَ فَنٍ, to study one science, تَمِّمْهُ, complete it, study it completely from A to Z. وَأَنْ سِوَاهُ قَبْلَ الْإِنْتِهَاءِ مَهْ. As for any other sciences, ما سواه, that which is besides it, قبل الانتهاء, before completing the previous science, ما, stop, don't do it. That's a ism, that's a nahi. وفي ترادف العلوم المنعوجة, and in gathering different ilms and sciences, al-man, this is something that is prohibited. جاء in توأمان, what do you think about in توأمان, twins? استبقا لن يخرجا, if they both try to come out at the same time, what's going to happen? If they both try to leave the womb together, what's going to happen? لن يخرجا, they will not come out. So what he's saying is, if you trying to learn multiple sciences at the same time, you won't benefit. You need to learn one science at a time. So obviously this depends on the person. This depends. If the person he knows himself, he has the ability to join between multiple subjects, studying 5 books at a time, 3 books at a time, no problem. Shaykh Sālih al-Usaymī rahimahullah continues and he says, وَمَنْ عَرَفَ مِنْ نَفْسِهِ قُدْرَةً عَلَى الْجَمْعِ جَمَعَهُ. Whoever knows from himself that he's able to study multiple sciences, جمعة. He can study multiple sciences. وكانت حاله استثناء من العموم, and his condition will be an exception to the general rule. ومن نواقض هذا المعقد المشاهدة, and from the nawaqid, the nullifiers of this principle, al-mushahada, that is seen today. If you only study one science at a time, what are some of the harms if you only study one science? It is al-ihjam and tanawwu' al-ulum. It is al-ihjam, the reluctance. You keep yourself back from diversifying your knowledge of the various sciences. Number two, wal-istighfaf bi ba'd al-ma'arif, belittling some types of knowledge. Number three, wal-ishtighal bima la yanfa', and busying yourself with that which does not benefit you. Ma'al wala'i bil gharaib, and you fall in love with strange issues, such as, what's the name of the dog in Surah Al-Kahf? How big was the ark of Noah? وكان مالك يقول, Imam Malik rahimahullah used to say, شر العلم الغريب. The worst of knowledge is that which is gharib. ما معنى غريب?
Strange one.
That's the linguistic meaning. So obviously in the science of hadith, gharib is normally a hadith يتفرد به الراوي, that one rawi narrates alone. So in the past, being a hadith narrator it was a sharaf, it was an honor, right? And so if you wanted to stand out, you would narrate some obscure hadith or some hadith that no one really narrates. So Imam Malik rahimahullah says this is sharr al-ilm. وخير العلم, and the best of knowledge is al-zahir, that which everyone knows. الذي قد رواه الناس, which all people have narrated. This is what Imam Malik rahimahullah says, and this narration comes in Al-Kifaya fi ilm usul al-riwaya by Al-Khatib al-Baghdadi rahimahullah. If there's anything that vocabulary that you're not sure of, or there's a line that you don't know the nahu, or there's a quote that you don't know where it comes from, feel free to ask, inshallah. Sometimes I forget to mention it. Al-Ma'aqid al-Sabi', the principle number 7, inshallah. I'll try to read quickly through this, inshallah. The author rahimahullah says, Al-Ma'aqid al-Sabi', principle number 7, Al-Mubadaratu ila tahsilihi wa ightinam sinni as-siba wa shabab. Hastening to acquire knowledge, not wasting time. Wa ightinam sinni as-siba wa shabab, and benefiting from your youthfulness and your young age. Siba and shabab. فإن العمر زهرة إما أن تصير بسلوك المعالي ثمرة وإما أن تذبل وإن مما تثمر به زهرة العمر المبادرة لتحصيل العلم وترك الكسل والعجز واغتنام سن الصبا والشباب امتثالا للأمر باستباق الخيرات كما قال الله تعالى فاستبقوا الخيرات. The author رحمه الله تعالى says, فإن العمر زهرة, life is like a flower. إما أن تصير بسلوك المعالي ثمرة, either you will become, by acquiring noble things, by acquiring knowledge and ilm, either you will become fruit through acquiring these high things of life, these things of value, وَإِمَّا أَن تَذْبُلْ, or this flower either changes into a fruit, or it becomes withered and it becomes expended. وَإِنَّ مِمَّا تُثْمِرْ بِهِ زَهْرَةُ الْعُمَرِ, and that which the flower of life, تثمر به, that benefit which is gives, the fruits of it which it gives, is المبادرة إلى تحصيل العلم. It is hastening to acquire knowledge. وترك الكسل والعجز, and abandoning laziness and saying I can't do it. واغتنام سن الصبا والشباب, and benefiting from your youthful age and your young age. امتثالا, and this is out of obedience, that is مفعول لأجله. امتثالا للأمر, this is in compliance to the command of Allah Ta'ala, باستباق الخيرات, to hasten to do good. كما قال تعالى, as He subhanahu wa ta'ala most high said, فاستبقوا الخيرات, hasten to the goods, to the good things. Al-Baqarah verse 148. وأيام الحداثة فاغتنمها على إن الحداثة لا تدوم. The poet says, and this comes in Zarnuji's تعليم المتعلم طريق التعليم, he says that your days of youthfulness, فاغتنمها, take it as ghanima, use it and benefit it from it. Why? Allah, behold, hearken and put up your ears, إن الحداثة لا تدوم. Your youthful age will not last forever. It will not continue. And that's why Shafi rahimahullah ta'ala said, اصبر على مر الجفا من معلم فإن رسوب العلم في نفراته ومن لم يذق مر تعلم ساعة تذرع ذل الجهل طول حياته ومن فاته التعليم وقت شبابه فكبر عليه أربعا لوفاته. Shafi rahimahullah used to say, have patience, اصبر على مر الجفا من معلم. Have patience on the bitterness of the harshness of a teacher. فإن رسوب العلم في النفرات, because when do you not gain knowledge? When you hate this from the teacher. It likes the teacher ni. ومن لم يذق مر تعلم ساعة. Whoever for a moment has not tasted learning, the bitterness of learning, تذرع. He will gulp and drink the disgrace of ignorance for the rest of his life. ومن فاته التعليم وقت شبابه. That person who never studied whilst they were young, فكبر عليه أربعا لوفاته. Say Allahu Akbar 4 times on that person, because indeed that person is dead. Subhanallah. Al-Hafiz Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali rahimahullah says in his book Lata'if al-Ma'arif, which is a very good book. Lata'if al-Ma'arif is a good book to read, in the month of Sha'ban, in the month of Ramadan. What are the special acts of worship in different months? He says, مدة الشباب قصيرة كمدة زهر الربيع وبهجته ونضارته فإذا يبس وبيض فقد آن ارتحاله. He says your period of youthfulness is like the period of the flowers in the month of spring and its freshness. When that flower becomes white and it becomes dry and withered, then that time is gone. And that's how youth is. The Prophet ﷺ said, Abdullah bin Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu said that the Prophet ﷺ said, اغتنم خمسا قبل خمس. Benefit from 5 things before 5 things come to you. شبابك قبل هرمك. Benefit from your youth before old age comes. وصحتك قبل سقمك. Benefit from your health before sickness comes. وغناك قبل فقرك. Benefit from the time when you have wealth before a time will come when you don't have wealth. وفراغك قبل شغلك. Benefit from the time that from your free time before a time of busyness will come to you. وحياتك قبل موتك. And benefit from your life before your death. Narrated by Al-Hakim and considered authentic. The Prophet said, from those 7 categories, سَبَعَةٌ يُذِلُّهُمُ اللَّهُ فِي ظِلِّهِ يَوْمَ لَا ظِلَّ إِلَّا ظِلُّهُ, from the 7 categories of people that Allah will shade in His shade on the day when there will be no shade. But the shade of Allah will be whom? شاب نشأ في عبادة الله. A young man or a young lady who spent their time in Allah's worship. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, لا تزول قدم ابن عبد لا تزول قدم ابن آدم يوم القيامة من عند ربي حتى يسأل عن 5. Your feet will not move 1 inch on the day of judgment until you are asked 5 things. عن عمري فيما أفناه, about your life and how you spent your life. وعن شبابي فيما أبلاه, your youth and how you spent your youth. وعن ماله من أين اكتسبه وفيما أنفقه, your wealth, how you earned it and where you spent it. وماذا عمل فيما علم, and did you practice on the knowledge that you had. رواه الترمذي وصححه الألباني. Imam Ahmad rahimahullah says, Shaykh Sālih al-Usaymī rahimahullah continues and he says, قال أحمد, Imam Ahmad rahimahullah says, ما شبهت الشباب إلا بشيء كان في كمي فسقط. I do not compare youthfulness to anything except like something that was in my sleeve and then it fell and it's gone. That's how quickly your age and your youth leaves you. It leaves quickly. Al-Hasan al-Basri rahimahullah said, العلم في الصغر كالنقش في الحجر. Knowledge acquired whilst you are young is like an imprint on a stone. والعلم في الكبر, and knowledge in old age كالكتابة في الماء, is like writing on water. You forget things. The author rahimahullah goes on and he says, فَقُوَّةُ بَقَاءِ الْعِلْمِ فِي صِغَرٍ. The strength of knowledge is whilst you are young. كَقُوَّةِ بَقَاءِ النَّقْشِ فِي الْحَجْرِ, like the strength of an imprint on a rock. فَمَنِ اغْتَنَمَ شَبَابَهُ, whoever benefits from his youth and he uses his youth, نَالَ إِرْبَهُ, he will acquire his need, he will acquire knowledge. وَحَمِدَ عِنْدَ مَشِيبِهِ صُرَى, and he will praise at the time of old age his mashib, surah, his night journey. What does that mean? He will praise his night journey. What night journey are they speaking about?
I think it's referring to the time it took to study more.
The
If
time that
he,
he put in. As the Arabs have a saying, they say, عند الصباح يحمد الناس السرى. When people reach morning, they praise their night journey. They praise the fact that they made effort during the night and walked and moved and traveled. عند الصباح يحمد الناس السرى. So the author says, فمن اغتنم. If I start hackling and stuttering, you must know I'm becoming tired now. فمن اغتنم شبابه ونال إربه وحمد عند مشيبه سراه. The poet says, اغتنم سن الشباب يا فتى عند المشيب يحمد القوم السرى. اغتنم, benefit from your youthful age. سن الشباب, يا فتى, or young man or a young lady. عند المشيب, at the time of gray hair. يحمد القوم السرى. The people will praise thee. They will praise the night journey. They will praise the efforts. وأضر شيء على الشباب التسويف وطول الأمل. He says the worst thing and the most harmful thing for youth is التسويف. What is التسويف? Who can tell me what is التسويف? Saying sofa and sofa. وأضر شيء على الشباب التسويف وطول الأمل. He's saying سوف, inshallah, soon, soon, soon. وطول الأمل, and having long hopes. فيسوف أحدهم, one of them will say سوف 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 ويركب بحر الأماني, and he will sail on the sea of hopes. ويشتغل بأحلام اليقظة, and he will be busy with daydreaming. ويحدث نفسه, and he will tell himself أن الأيام المستقبلة ستفرغ له من الشواغل, that the coming days he will be freed up from all activities and occupations. وتصفو من المكدرات والعوائق, and he will be free from all obstacles and those things that impede him from seeking knowledge. But my beloved brothers, that is not the case. As Imam Suyuti rahimahullah has a beautiful line in his book Al-Ashbah wal-Nadha'ir on Al-Qawa'id al-Fiqhiyya. He says something amazing. He says, وَالْعَمْرِ إِنَّ هَذَا الْفَنَّ لَا يُدْرَكُ بِالتَّمَنِّي وَلَا يُنَالُ بِسَوْفَ وَلَعَلَّ وَلَوْ أَنِّي وَلَا يَبْلُغُ إِلَّا مَنْ كَشَفَ عَنْ سَاعِدِ الْجِدِّ وَشَمَّرَ وَاعْتَزَلَ أَهْلَهُ وَشَدَّ الْمِئْزَرَ وَخَاضَ الْبِحَارَ وَخَالَةَ الْعَجَّاجِ وَلَازَمَ التِّرْدَادِ إِلَى الْأَبْوَابِ فِي اللَّيْلِ الدَّاجِ. He says, indeed, this knowledge, لا يدرك بالتمني. It won't be reached by saying, later, if only. ولا ينال بسوف. It will not be, you will not obtain knowledge by saying, سوف, soon. ولعل ولو أني. Or, if only I did. Or, perhaps if I did this. ولا يبلغ إلا من كشف عن ساعد الجد والشمر. No one will reach this knowledge except he who pulls up his sleeves, pulls up his pants, and he works hard. واعتزل أهله. He stays away from his wife. وشد المئزر, and he ties up his pants. وخاض البحار, and he swims through the ocean. ولازم الترداد إلى الأبواب في الليل, and he goes to the doors and he knocks on the doors in the darkness of the night. This is the person who will receive this knowledge, subhanallah. So he says, وأضر شيء على شباب التسويف وطول العمل فيسوف أحدهم ويركب بحر الأماني ويشتغل بأحلام اليقظة ويحدث نفسه أن الأيام المستقبلة ستفرغ له من الشواغل وتصفو من المكدرات والعوائق والحال المنظورة. But what is the expected outcome? أن من كبرت سنه كثرت شواغله. He who grows old in age, his duties become more. وعظمت قواطعه. Those things that prevent him become greater. مع ضعف الجسم ووهن القوى. And his body becomes weaker and his strengths become less. ولن تدرك الغايات العظمى بتلهف وترجي وتمني. Great things, الغايات العظمى, goals will not be reached بتلهف, by saying بتلهف. ما معنى تلهف? تلهف comes from the word يا لهفي. It's like a word of يا حسرة, oh what a loss, يا لهفي. Goals will not reach by بتلهف, by lamenting وترجي and saying, you know what, if only, لعلي, if I did this, or تمني, later, you know, if only I did that. Knowledge will not be, goals will not be achieved by that. ولست بمدرك ما فات مني باللهف ولا بليت ولا لو أني. ولست بمدرك ما فات مني. I cannot catch up that which has passed me. I cannot get back that which has passed me by saying, lahfa, I long for, or later, if only, wala law anni, or if I did so and so, this would have happened. Time's gone. So you need to use the time that you have now. But for those of us who are senior in age, the author rahimahullah says, وَلَا يُتَوَهَّمْ, it should not come to mind, مِمَّا سَبَقْ, regarding that which we have discussed previously, أَنَّ الْكَبِيرَ لَا يَتَعَلَّمْ, that a person of senior age cannot learn. بَلْ هَؤُلَاءِ أَصْحَابُ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ تَعَلَّمُوا كِبَارًا, rather the companions of the Prophet learned whilst they were grown men. ذكره البخاري في كتاب العلم من صحيحه. Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah mentions this in the book of knowledge in Sahih al-Bukhari. وَإِنَّمَا يَعْصُرُ التَّعَلُّمْ فِي الْكِبَرِ, knowledge is only difficult, learning is difficult when you reach a senior age. كما بينه الماوردي في أدب الدنيا والدين, like al-Mawardi mentions in his book, a beautiful book on life lessons actually, called أدب الدنيا والدين. It becomes difficult to learn. Why? لكثرة الشواغل, because of the many occupations and activities that you have going on in your life. بكثرة الشواغل وغلبة القواطع وتكاثر العلائق, and the many relations and obligations that you have. فمن قدر على دفعها عن نفسه, whoever is able to ward off these things that keep him busy, أدرك العلم, he will reach knowledge. وقد وقع هذا لجماعة من النبلاء, and this has occurred for many noble scholars of the past. طلبوا العلم, they started seeking knowledge كبارا, as grown men. فأدركوا منه قدرا عظيما, and they achieved therefrom a great amount of knowledge. From among them, Al-Qaffal al-Shafi'i. He's called Qaffal because he used to make locks, and then he gave that up and started seeking knowledge. And there's many stories like that. Subhanallah. Imam Suyuti rahimahullah says in his book Tadrib al-Rawi, يستحب أن يبتدئ بسماع الحديث بعد 30 سنة وعليه أهل الشام. Imam Suyuti rahimahullah said it was from the habits of the scholars of Sham that they would only start learning hadith at the age of 30 years old. Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu, who was a'lam hadhi al-ummah after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he started seeking knowledge when he was close to 40 years old. Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu was in his 30s. Radiallahu ta'ala, all of them started seeking knowledge as grown men. Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu said, تَفَقَّهُ قَبْلَ أَن تُسَوَّدُوا, study before you become in a position of leadership. Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah said, وَقَدْ تَعَلَّمَ أَصْحَابُ النَّبِي صلى الله عليه وسلم في كِبَرِ سِنِّهِمْ, the companions of the Prophet studied this deen whilst they were grown men. And this was the example of many scholars of the past. Al-Qaffal, Al-Saghir, the one mentioned in the text, Al-Shafi'i, Abu Bakr Abdullah bin Ahmad Abdullah Al-Marwazi, rahimahullah ta'ala, he was the Shaykh of the Shafi'is in Khurasan. His nickname was Qaffal because he was a person who would make locks. Later on, he gave that up. He was in his 30s. He realized that he has a skill and an intelligence for knowledge, and he started seeking knowledge to the extent that he became the Imam of the people of Khurasan and the Imam of his time. Asbagh bin al-Faraj, who became the Mufti of Egypt in his time, he started studying this deen at a senior age. He never met Imam Malik rahimahullah, unfortunately never met Layth bin Sa'ad, who was the main scholar of Egypt. He started studying after that, and he became one of the senior scholars of his time. He traveled and met many scholars. The main judge of Egypt, Al-Harith bin Miskin, who died in the year 250 AH, he started studying, إِنَّمَا الطَّلَبَ الْعِلْمِ, Imam al-Dhahabi rahimahullah says, he started studying ala kibar, in old age. Fudayl bin Iyad, Ibn al-Arabi, the great Maliki scholar, Ibn Hazm, the great Zahiri scholar, Al-Izz bin Abdi Salam. All of these people started studying at senior age, at a senior age, subhanAllah. It is said that the main scholar among the Mutaakhirin, Shaykh al-Islam Zakaria al-Ansari of the Shafi'is in Egypt, he was one day fitting on a jubba, and the owner of the shop came to him, and the owner was very angry. And the owner started telling him, this clothing is not fitting for anyone other than a Shaykh al-Islam, the Mufti at the time. And that gave him the inspiration to study the deen. Ibn Aqil, we mentioned the story. He said, إني لا أجد من لذة الطلب وأنا ابن 80 أشد مما أجد وأنا ابن 40. Ibn Aqil al-Hanbali said, I find the joy and the pleasure and the ecstasy in seeking knowledge at the age of 80 more than I found it at the age of 40 years old. Ibn Hazm rahimahullah one day entered the masjid. He sat down and someone rebuked him for sitting down, and the person said, why are you not making tahiyatul masjid? The next time he entered the masjid, someone rebuked him and said, you are not allowed to make tahiyatul masjid. It's not a time for salah, it's a prohibited time. This confused him to the extent that he started studying and he became an imam in Al-Andalus. The famous Khalid bin Abdillāh al-Azhari, a 10th century Azhari scholar who became one of the main scholars of Nahu. He was a scholar, he was a student, and someone rebuked him one day for messing on their book. And the person said, you are jahil and you will remain a jahil. And this gave him such motivation that he became a leading scholar in Nahu. And he wrote commentaries on the Alfiyat ibn. He wrote commentaries on the commentaries of the Alfiyat ibn Malik. Imam al-Kasai, the famous Kasai in Qira'at, and the Shaykh of Arabic, he heard Imam Shafi rahimahullah ta'ala saying, whoever wants ayatabahar fi nahu fahuwa, Imam Shafi rahimahullah said about him, whoever wants to go deep into Arabic, fahuwa iyalun al-Kasai, then he is dependent on Kasai. He started studying at a very ripe old age. And the story goes that he was walking one day and he was unable to continue walking. He sat down among a group of people and he started saying, A'yaytu, I'm unable to continue walking. And the people rebuked him. The people said, you speak bad Arabic. أنت تلحن. فقال كيف لحنت؟ فقال إن كنت أردت من التعب فكل. Is it now? He said, أعييت. أعييت. They said, you're supposed to say أعييت. And this forced him and started motivating him to learn. And there's so many other stories. Okay, we did that one. The famous Al-Fudayl bin Iyad, Imam Dhahabi rahimahullah mentions in Sir A'lam al-Nubala that he used to be a person that used to be a highway robber. And he was in love with a girl and he did all the wrongs that you could probably think of. And one day, one night, he got over a wall to go to this girl that he was in love with, and he heard someone reciting the verse, أَلَمْ يَأْنِ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا تَخْشَعْ قُلُوبُهُمْ لِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ وَمَا نَزَلَ مِنَ الْحَقِّ. Has the time not come for those who believe in Allah that their hearts become humble to Allah Ta'ala's remembrance? And this ayah affected him to such an extent that he gave up all that sin. And he became one of the most knowledgeable people of his time. He made tawbah and he became one of the most knowledgeable people of his time. Ibn Hazm, we mentioned the story of Ibn Hazm, how he started seeking knowledge. But many of these scholars started learning. Many people even say Imam Abu Isa Tirmidhi rahimahullah started in his 30s to learn the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the scholars say, as the author rahimahullah mentions in the text, or he doesn't mention it here, he mentions it somewhere else, وَفِي الْقَدِيمِ وَالْحَدِيثِ, in the past and in the present, the scholars used to say, مَنْ طَلَبَ الْعِلْمَ كَبِيرًا, whoever seeks knowledge as an older person, فَصَارَ إِلَيْهِ مُشَارًا إِلَيْهِ بِالتَّقَدُّمِ, this person will stand out among others. He will be mushar ilay bitaqaddumi. People point fingers to him that this person has advanced in seeking knowledge. And the reason for that is because it's more difficult. So Shaykh Sālih al-Usaymī rahimahullah says that we shouldn't lose hope if we are older. And many of us, I'm assuming, started learning whilst we were in our 30s. Some of us perhaps younger than others. And Allah knows best. Let's just do this one page, inshallah, and then we'll stop here. Al-Ma'aqidu Thamin. The 8th principle. لزوم التأني في طلبه وترك العجلة. Can anyone read for us, inshallah? Abu, you can read, inshallah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قال المصنف رحمه الله: إن تحصيل العلم لا يكون جملة واحدة إذ القلب يضعف عن ذلك، وإن للعلم فيه ثقلا كثقل الحجر في يد حامله. قال تعالى: إنا سنلقي عليك قولا ثقيلا. سورة المزمل أي القرآن. وإذا كان هذا وصف القرآن الميسر كما قال تعالى: ولقد يسرنا القرآن للذكر. سورة قمر verse 17. فما الظن بغيره من العلوم، وقد وقع تنزيل القرآن رعاية لهذا الأمر منجما مفرقا باعتبار الحوادث والنوازل كما قال تعالى: وقال الذين كفروا لولا نزل عليه القرآن جملة واحدة. كذلك لنثبت به فؤادك ورتلناه ترتيلا. سورة فرقان. وهذه الآية حجة في لزوم التأني في طلب العلم وتدرج فيه وترك العجلة كما ذكره الخطيب البغدادي في الفقيه والمتفقه، والراغب الأصفهاني في مقدمة جامع التفسير، ومن شعر ابن النحاس الحلبي قوله رحمه الله: اليوم شيء وغدا مثله من نخب العلم التي تلتقط يحصل المرء بها حكمة، وإنما السيل اجتماع نقط.
Okay, no problem, inshallah. Okay, so the author rahimahullah says, Al-Ma'aqidu Thamin, the 8th principle. Just want to see something. Where's my mouse? 8th principle. The author rahimahullah says, Al-Ma'aqidu Thamin, لزوم التأني في طلبه. Sticking to ta'anni, to diligence in seeking it. وَتَرْكُ الْعَجَلَةِ, and leaving off and abandoning al-ajala, hastiness in knowledge. The Prophet ﷺ said, al-ajala min shaitan. Hastiness is from the devil in anything. And that's why you feel, today, unfortunately, ma'al asaf shadid, people are having alim courses in 1 year now. And 2 years and 3 years. Become a scholar in 1 year, 2 years. They call it an alim course, or they call it a scholar course, or whatever they call it, in one, because this is the principle that is being neglected over here. At-ta'anni fi talabi. Having diligence, taking your time in seeking this knowledge, and not rushing this. There's a famous qa'ida in fiqh that says, Man ta'ajjala shay'an qabla awanihi, uqiba bihirmanihi. This is a famous qa'ida in qawaid fiqhiyah. Whoever hastens something before its time, he will be deprived. He will be rewarded by being deprived of it. So if you kill the person that you're inheriting from, then you won't inherit. Man ta'ajjala shay'in qabla awani uqib. Similarly, if someone he engages he studies things that he's not supposed to study, he's starting to teach when he's not ready to teach, he will be deprived of certain ilm because he was supposed to be spending that time in studying. And what did Imam az-Zuhri rahimahullah, one of the most famous narrators of hadith, say? He said, Man rama al-ilma jumlatan, dhahaba anhu jumlatan. Whoever tries to acquire all knowledge in one go, it will leave him in one go. وإنما يطلب العلم على مر الأيام والليالي. Knowledge should be taken across the days and nights, meaning a long period of time. This is narrated by Ibn Abdul Barr in his Jami' al-Ilm. So knowledge should be taken, he says, لزوم التأني في طلبه وترك العجلة. And that's why the scholars of the past used to say, خذ حرفا, take one thing, وقل ألفا, and say it over 1,000 times. Say it over 1,000 times. And so the author rahimahullah ta'ala says, إن التحصيل العلمي, acquiring the acquisition of knowledge, لا يكون جملة واحدة, cannot be in one go. And then he brings an example of the Quran. How was the Quran revealed? The Quran wasn't revealed in one go. The Quran was revealed over an extended period of time. إذ القلب يضعف عن ذلك, because the heart is unable to do that, to take all of knowledge. وإن للعلم فيه ثقلا, and in knowledge there's a certain heaviness. كثقل الحجر, like the heaviness of a rock, في يد حامل, in the one who carries it, in the hand of the one who carries it. قال تعالى, Allah says, إنا سنلقي عليك قولا ثقيلا. O Muhammad صلى الله عليه وسلم, we will reveal to you a heavy word, القرآن المزمل. وإذا كان هذا وصف القرآن الميسر, if this is the description of the Quran that has been described as easy, كما قال تعالى, as he subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَلَقَدَ, definitely, يسرنا, we have made easy القرآن للذكر, to remember. Surah Al-Qamar, verse number 17. فَمَا الظَّنْ بِغَيْرِ مِنَ الْعُلُومِ. So what do you think about other sciences? What do you think about other sciences? وقد وقع تنزيل القرآن رعاية لهذا الأمر منجما مفرقا باعتبار الحوادث والنوازل. The revelation of the Quran came down رعاية لهذا الأمر, keeping in mind this matter, the heaviness of the Quran. And that's why the Quran came down munajjaman mufarraqan. It came down in piecemeal over 23 years. This is التنزيل الثاني. باعتبار الحوادث والنوازل, in relation to the events that took place. كما قال تعالى, as he ta'ala said, وقال الذين كفروا, and those who disbelieved said, لولا نزل عليه القرآن جملة واحدة. Why has the Quran not been revealed upon him in one go? Allah says, why not? كذلك, like that. نزلته, I've revealed it, مفرقا ومنجما, لنثبت به فؤادك, to strengthen with it his heart, your heart, O Muhammad. ورتلناه ترتيلا, and we recite it a recitation. Surah Al-Furqan, verse 32. So the Quran was sent down. The Quran was sent down in piecemeal. And so similarly, knowledge should be taken in a similar manner. وهذه الآية, this ayah, حجة, is an evidence في لزوم التأني في طلب العلم, that one should stick to diligence in seeking knowledge. وتدرج فيه, and graduality, gradually moving from one science to the next. وترك العجلة, and leaving off hastiness. Because العجلة من الشيطان. كما ذكره الخطيب, as الخطيب البغدادي رحمه الله تعالى mentions in his book الفقيه والمتفقه. الفقيه والمتفقه is a book that deals with usul al-fiqh, but the beauty of how it's laid out, it's a beautiful book, right? He brings the usul al-fiqh principles through narrations. So he brings an entire sanad. So if he speaks about the issue of naskh, mansukh, umum and khusus, he speaks about these topics, he brings examples from the salaf and from those who came before him with his entire sanad to them. Al-Khatib al-Baghdadi, Ahmad ibn Ali ibn Thabit. He is known as Hafidh al-Mashriq, the Hafidh of Hadith of the East. And Ibn Abdul Barr that I quoted earlier is Hafidh al-Maghrib. Al-Khatib al-Baghdadi, there's no science of Hadith except that he authored a book on it. He was born in the year 392 and he died in the year 462. He's a very early scholar. He writes in his book, Al-Faqih wal-Mutafaqih. He mentions this principle that we need to have at-ta'anni in talab al-ilm and at-tadarruj fihi. Al-Raghib al-Asfahani, one of the famous scholars, He writes this as well in his Muqaddimah, in his introduction to Jami' al-Tafsir. He's got a book on tafsir. And in the book, he has a Muqaddimah, which he lays out the principles of interpreting the Quran. This, he mentions this point there as well. Is that clear? Is everybody still with me? ومن شعر ابن نحاس الحلبي قول رحمه الله, the author رحمه الله brings a beautiful poem. He says اليوم شيء وغدا مثله من نخب العلم التي تلتقط يحصل المرء بها حكمة وإنما السيل اجتماع النقط. اليوم شيء, today there is something and tomorrow there is the same thing. من نخب العلم, from the choicest of knowledge, التي تلتقط, that is acquired, that is picked up and taken. يحصل المرء بها, the person acquires from it حكمة, wisdom, knowledge. حكمة بمعنى علم. وإنما السيل, a flood comes together by what? اجتماع النقط, by the gathering of drops. So that you take little every day, eventually becomes big. So today is something and tomorrow is like it. اليوم شيء وغدا مثله. من نخب العلم التي تلتقط, for the choicest parts of knowledge which are gradually collected. يحصل المرء بها حكمة, a person achieves this ilm, this wisdom. وإنما السيل اجتماع النقط, for a torrent of water is nothing more than a gathering of drops. The author rahimahullah goes on and he says قال شعبة بن الحجاج. Shu'bah bin al-Hajjaj is one of the most famous tabi'un. Born in the year 82 and died in the year 160. The alim of Basra. Ibn Hajar describes him in his biography as thiqa, reliable, hafidh, mutqin. He studied under Ayyub Sakhtiyani and Qatada bin Di'am as-Sadusi. He saw many of the Sahaba, Anas bin Malik, Amr bin Salama, and he heard hadith from 400 tabi'un. He said, اختلفت إلى عمرو بن دينار. I went to my teacher, Amr bin Dinar, 500 مرة. 500 times I went to him. وما سمعت منه إلا 100 حديث. In those 500 times that I sat with him, I only took from him 100 hadith. في كل 5 مجالس حديث. In every 5 gatherings, there would be one hadith that I would take. Meaning there would be revision of that hadith and I would only take one hadith after every 5 sittings with him. قال حماد بن أبي سليمان لتلميذ له. Who can tell me what was Hamad bin Sulaiman? Does anyone know Hamad bin Sulaiman? Hamad bin Sulaiman is the teacher of Imam Abu Hanifa. Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah spent 18 years with him until his death basically. Imam Abu Hanifa is another person who started late in his life seeking knowledge. Hamad bin Abi Sulaiman, Imam Abu Hanifa says about him, there is not a day that passes except that I make a dua for him in every salah. Hamad bin Abi Sulaiman said to a student of his, تعلم كل يوم 3 مسائل. Learn every day 3 issues. ولا تزد عليها شيئا, and do not learn more than it. Do not learn more than it. He died in the year 120 after Hijrah. قال حماد بن ومقتضى لزوم التأني والتدرج, the demand of التأني, of diligence and tadarruj, gradually studying, is what? What is the demand of that? البداءة بالمتون الكسار المصنفة في فنون العلم, is starting with short mutun that was authored في فنون العلم, in the various sciences of knowledge. حفظا, by memorizing it. واستشراحا, and seeking the explanation thereof. والميل عن مطالعة المطولات, and turning away from studying the detailed books التي لم يرتفع طالب بعد إليها, which a student has not progressed intellectually to it as yet. So you get students who are studying, example, Mughni al-Muhtaj, reading a book like, but they haven't studied a basic matan in fiqh. You get students who are speaking about advanced matters of Aqidah, but they haven't mastered the basics of theology. That makes no sense. And today, if you can name drop books and say, you know what, I read Mughni, I read this book, it sounds cool. But if you inquire a bit more from that talib, you will see that that talib is lacking basic fundamentals of knowledge, because that is due to a lack of studying mutun and progressing to those texts and those books. The author rahimahullah goes on and he says, وَمَنْ تَعَرَّضَ لِلنَّظْرِ فِي الْمُطَوَّلَاتِ فَقَدْ يَجْنِي عَلَى دِينِهِ. Whoever opens himself up to looking into the mutawwalat, the detailed books, then he has brought destruction على دينه upon his deen. وتجاوز الاعتدال في العلم ربما أدى إلى تضييعه. And crossing the bounds of moderation in knowledge many times leads to the destruction of knowledge. ومن بدائع الحكم, and from the amazing words of wisdom is the words of Abdul Karim al-Rifa'i, who is the father of the current Mufti of Syria, Usaymī al-Rifa'i, who lived in Turkey, who recently went back to Syria. His son today is the Mufti of Syria. Abdul Karim al-Rifa'i, أحد شيوخ العلم, one of the teachers of knowledge in Damascus, Sham. He said في القرن الماضي, in the past century, he said, طعام الكبار سم الصغار. The food of older people is poison for younger people, meaning those books that are only studied by seasoned scholars, it doesn't befit those who are younger. وصدق, and he has spoken. Shaykh Sālih says he has spoken the truth. فإن الرضيع, a child that is being breastfed, إذا تناول طعام الكبار, if he eats the food of older people, مهما لذ وطاب, no matter how tasty it is and how sweet it is, أهلكه وأعطبه, it will make him sick. ومثله من يتناول المسائل الكبار. Similarly, he speaks about major issues من المطولات, mentioned in the detailed books, in the major works. يوقف نفسه مع ضعف الآلة على خلاف العلماء. He brings himself, يوقف نفسه, he makes himself stand مع ضعف الآلة, despite having weak tools, على خلاف العلماء, in front of the difference of opinion among the scholars, وتعدد مذاهبهم, and the different views في المنقول والمعقول, in matters that are transmitted and rational matters. So فالمتأني في أخذ العلم يلزم هذين الأصلين: يبتدئ بالمتون الكسار في أبواب العلم وأنواع حفظا واستشراحا، ويعزل نفسه عن مطالة المطولات التي لم يرتفي بعض إليها، مما يحتاج إلى آلة عظيمة في الفهم. فإن من ابتدأ في العلم ولا آلة له وتعرض للنظر في المطولات ربما جنى على دينه وتجاوز الاعتدال في العلم المؤدي إلى التضييع. So basically what the Shaykh is saying is, you have to stick to these principles of studying the smaller books, memorizing them and studying their meanings before progressing to the major works, which could be destructive for you if you don't have the proper tools to understand those books. And Allah Azza wa Jal, the author is not trying to scare us away from sitting with major scholars and studying these major works. But the author is basically trying to tell us there's a ladder, a sullam that you have to climb before you reach those works. And Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. Inshallah ta'ala, we'll stop there tonight and we'll continue with, just want to see what we have to do next. For some reason or the other, I won't be able, I don't know if I'm be able to stop the live because my mouse froze, so I can't do anything. Inshallah, the next act that we will do, al-ma'qid that we will do, is as-sabru fil ilmi tahammulan wa ada'an. Having patience in knowledge with regards to tahammul, learning, wa ada, and teaching. That's the next one, inshallah ta'ala, that we will. The next topic that we will continue with on Tuesday, inshallah. I know we took a lot of time tonight, but the purpose was to complete as much as possible, inshallah. So if we do next week, Tuesday 9 and 10, then we'll have 10 principles left, inshallah ta'ala. So I mentioned something about Al-Khatib al-Baghdadi, rahimahullah. He wrote this book, Al-Faqih wal-Mutafaqih. It's an usul al-fiqh, but it's an usul al-fiqh text that is brought with asanid. So everything that he quotes, all the principles of how to understand the Quran and the Sunnah, the different aspects of understanding Quran and Sunnah, he brings it with asanid. Then he's got another famous book, Al-Kifaya fi Ma'rifati Usuli Ilmi Riwaya, which is a book on the science of hadith. But every principle, with regards to how to consider hadith authentic, not authentic, what was the processes of the scholars of the past with regards to how they viewed hadith, he brings everything with its sanad. And Allah knows best.